There we go.
Excellent.
And somebody remind me how I make this full screen. There was a way, and I always forget. Anyone? Shout it out if you
Do
know.
you hide
Enter full
thumbnails?
screen.
Oh,
Guys, I did it. Okay.
well done, Sam.
Thank you so, so much. Also, going to be looking this way the whole time. I'm sorry, but that's how the monitor is set up, and I don't want to break anything. So, welcome everyone to Shadows and Secrets. This is our sixth series in our series of craft focused webinars. How is it August 2024 already? I have no idea. I keep thinking that's the wrong thing, and I keep checking, and it is. And so, not sure what's happening to time. We record all of these and make them available for free. That will be something we're going to keep doing through the end of 2024. And just to give you a heads up, we will have one in October and one in December. We are skipping September and November. September for retreat purposes and November because we're both traveling the whole time. So, and also it just is a busy time of year for everyone. So you will send out those dates with this email so you have them well ahead of time and hopefully you can join for both. The one in October is going to cover setting an MTS. That will be one that Kerry is taking on, and the one in December will be another one that I am taking on. And that is the date, Monday, October 14th at 6 p.m. Eastern. Alrighty, who are we? Hi, everyone who already knows us. Good to see you again. If you don't know us, I am Samantha Skal. I go by Sam or Samantha, whatever floats your boat, and Kerry goes by Kerry. We are both experienced book coaches. We are obsessed with mystery, thriller, and suspense, MTS, scary fiction, horror, twists, all of that. We're both certified with Author Accelerator, which is a book coaching certification program that we both highly recommend and love. And Shadows and Secrets is the writing retreat that we wanted to attend, so we decided to make it happen. So this is our dream coming to life, and we cannot wait. It's like a month and a week away, and
Mhm.
it's going to be a blast. It's going to be in a haunted hotel this year in Salem, Massachusetts. I will quickly introduce myself. As I said, I'm a book coach. I'm also a author myself, working on my debut novel, which has been a 3-year journey, but we're still going. And it'll happen at some point when it's meant to. I, in my coaching world, focus on mystery, thriller, and suspense, novel planning, all the way through agent pitching. And my superpower is twist brainstorming without having to rewrite. It's a delightful place to sit, and I love when people come to me with their deep, dark problems with their plots, and we can figure out how to make it work. I am the executive director of Thriller Fest, a conference that every single person on this call should attend if you can make it work. I volunteer mentor for Women's Fiction Writers Association. What a handful that is to say. And I used to be the co-director of Thriller Fest and also of Pitch Fest at Thriller Fest. So obviously that's my organization I'm obsessed with. I love cheese. And I recently attended a Renaissance fair for the first time, which was absolutely everything I expected and more, and I adored it. So here's Kerry. She will introduce herself.
I have not heard about this yet, so I definitely need to
Mhm.
hear more about that. Hi, everybody. I'm Kerry. I am also, as Sam said, a certified book coach. My focus is on helping novelists of all kinds of genres, including MTS, mystery, thriller, and suspense, plan, draft, and revise with confidence. My superpower is synthesizing plot and character and just asking a ton of questions, which our Shadows attendees on this call will see very, very shortly. So you'll all get your workbooks back. Um, I also am working on, well, both I'm working on 2 novels now. My first one, which has been going on 7 years. So I got you beat there, Sam. That's hence I could not actually conceive of writing a novel in 30 days. So please, like I said, share your secrets. But it'll happen when it's meant to. It takes as long as it takes, right? I am also a Women Fiction Writers Association and a Sisters in Crime mentor, and I love
Hello.
working with folks that way. I love both of those organizations. I also love cheese. I love good wine, which is good because my husband owns a wine and cheese shop. And I am no longer trying to keep the rabbits from decimating my tomato plants. I've realized that my battle is now with the squirrels who have eaten legitimately all of the heirlooms that I have, beautiful
Oops.
heirloom tomatoes that have grown and completely scooped out in the middle, because apparently the squirrels are thirsty. So those little jerks have eaten all my tomatoes.
Maybe they're vitamin C deficient or something.
Apparently it's the drought here, although I didn't think we were in a drought, but whatever.
Poor little critters.
I don't feel bad for them.
Yeah.
They ate my
Um,
tomatoes.
Semi-related story. I was walking up the street yesterday and a rabbit jumped out at me from a bush and I screamed. And it was like probably this big. It was very cute. But that's a thing that has happened to me recently. So with
They move
rodents,
fast, those
they
little
sure do.
rabbits.
Yeah. Okay, so in the next 30 minutes, we promise this will be actually on time this time. We are going to cover what is point of view exactly, the various options one has in mystery, thriller, and suspense, and obviously this applies to other genres, but we're going to be focusing on MTS, pros and cons of each, and then creating suspense with the choices that you make. And then we will end with the retreat AMA and Q&A. If you already have heard about the retreat, you are welcome to hop off at that point. We'll go through that really quickly and then do a Q&A where we will decide as a group to record it or not, so that you can ask your questions and not have to worry about it being on YouTube later. So dive right in. POV options and pros and cons of each. So here is the octopus that Kerry teased on Instagram, if you saw that post. So I will explain this. POV is sort of like an octopus, and here is why. So if you picture an octopus sitting on your face as opposed to sitting on top of your head versus like hovering behind you, which is why this is sort of like an alien octopus that can do whatever it wants to do. It has 25 arms, as you can see. This is POV. So first person POV is you are looking through the octopus, like it's sitting on your face. It is not letting you see anything else. Your filters are going through the octopus's filters. This is also the filter through which the reader experiences the story. There is no filter between you, the author, the POV character, and the reader. They are experiencing and feeling every single thing that the octopus is experiencing and feeling, and that you, the author, and the protagonist, the POV character, are experiencing and feeling. You can think of the octopus like breathing for them, what this person sees and thinks, what the octopus sees and thinks, right? There's just no differentiation. Third person is where the octopus is attached to the back of your head, and so it can't move independently. Every time the POV character turns their head, the octopus is going to see that too. And so there is a bit of a filter, and that the octopus is filtering through and being like, okay, this person I'm sitting on is saying, he's saying this, she's thinking that, they're doing that thing over there. And so the reader is reminded a little bit that there is a filter, but it's still just everything that the POV character sees and thinks, the octopus is going to see and think, because they have a little brain meld with you because they're on top of your head. We all following? Omniscient is where the octopus is hovering above. It can independently turn, it can look behind, it can be over here, it can be looking at you from like up in the corner of the room, which I'm now staring at to make sure there's no spiders. And it can independently decide what to see. It can pop in and out of your thoughts. It can do whatever it wants. But because this is a writing octopus, it is consistent so that we don't confuse the reader. So whatever the octopus decides to do when it's telling the story, it's going to be consistent throughout the story. All right, so a little bit deeper dive into each of these. First person POV, octopus on the face, I, me, right? This is how the person is telling the story. There is zero filter. One of the biggest huge pros is that we have huge engagement with the reader. We, the reader, forget that we are not the protagonist. We are this person moving through this story. We are experiencing everything they're experiencing. And in MTS particularly, this is the same fears, right? So if the person, and I've given this example before, like, I don't like walking through the woods at night. I find it to be absolutely terrifying. Some people find this to be very peaceful. I am not one of them. And so when I am an author, or I, the POV character, am walking through the woods, because I'm me and I'm writing the book, this person's going to be absolutely terrified of things that may jump out at them. The reader is going to absorb that fear and feel exactly the same thing because I am guiding them through the story in that way. I'm going to just mute that's fine. So we see the same things. The translation is the same. The octopus is translating things. The reader is then receiving what that translation is. This is absolutely ideal for misdirection. We don't even think to question as the reader what the POV character is thinking or how they're translating, because we're just being led through it. Clever readers will take a look back and be like, huh, this person is translating this in this way, but also I'm clocking that they're seeing this thing over here. And I'm a clever reader, so I know that their author's trying to mess with me right now. But, usually it's just like whatever we see and feel and think is exactly the same thing. Third person, pros and cons. Clearly have practiced this. We, the POV character, can only know what we personally discover. This is see, read in a thing that's in front of us, be told, discover, intuit, like, you know, whatever. This is super engaging, but it can be very difficult for anything except for a straight A to Z kind of mystery experience. So if this person is trying to solve a crime, they're going to be like, oh, there's a clue. There's a clue. I'm going to take this action. I'm going to do that. They don't have the ability to see what's behind them or any clue that's over here that they haven't discovered yet. And so obviously you can very easily picture a world where that becomes quite limiting from a writing perspective. It can make things a lot more difficult if you're trying to write a mystery where you want the reader to be scared of something that's coming up behind this person. When we're told we don't know what was there, that can cause goosebumps, but it also decreases the suspense in the moment. So you picture a scene where you have somebody chopping vegetables in the kitchen and there's a big window and someone is watching them from outside. If we're in first person POV with the person chopping the vegetables, we have no idea somebody is outside watching us. We're only going to know that once we figure out after that there was proof that somebody was watching us. And that moment can be very goosebumpy, but in the moment you're just chopping vegetables, which is kind of boring. So third person, the octopus is on top of the head, very similar to first. Brad thinks, Susan feels. We're constantly reminded that we're one step removed, which can be kind of a negative. It kind of depends. It also makes it easier for the reader to track if you have several different POV characters. So it's great for multiple POV stories because there's no reader confusion. Instead of having like two first persons where you're kind of like, okay, is this Brad or is this Susan? What's happening? We have 100% access to what the POV character is seeing and thinking, so works well as, again, for misdirection. However, same thing. They can only know what they can personally discover, see, read, be told, whatever. The reader is almost right there, but this can be less engaging than first because of this step back, right? The octopus is on top of the head. We're not on the face. We're constantly reminded, like, Brad is thinking this. Susan is going to go do this. Susan thinks this. Head hopping can be a much easier mistake in third person, particularly if you're getting a little frisky with having multiple POVs in one chapter, which I have seen done well. I've also seen it done very, very badly where it's very confusing. So just keep this in mind. Head hopping is where the author goes from one head to a different head, and there's not a huge distinction between them. And so we end up feeling like we have whiplash. We're like, wait, what? I was hearing the story from this person's perspective. How am I over here? How do I know what this character is now thinking? We must follow only one POV character at a time. You can get away with doing this multiple times in a chapter, but you need some kind of indicator that things are flipping. And so I'll just leave it at that because I think we all kind of know what's happening there. Like, you know it when you see it when it's not working. In general, a good rule of thumb is one chapter per POV character, and that's a very easy way to keep things very separate. Omniscient, as again, the octopus is floating above. It can choose and be into anyone's brains that it wants to. It chooses who to follow. It also has its own opinion. And so as it's cruising around in this room or possibly over in that next room or possibly down the street or like, wherever in the coffee shop, the omniscient octopus can sit there and be like, ooh, that character over there has no idea that that person is following them with a knife or whatever. And so the suspense there can be really, really positive, right? You know, as the reader that something bad is about to happen and this person has no idea what's coming. However, the reader is constantly aware that they're having the story translated to them, which can work in certain situations, but it also has a very serious pro and con list. So we have to know as an author who this narrator is, what their goals are, how are they related to the story. This is a very common thing, and I'll say like literary fiction because it's an easy way to tell a story with like lots of different little vignettes. In mystery, thriller, and suspense, we start to ask questions like, what are they hiding from us and why? How are they related to the story? How do they know all of this if they're this person like bopping from scene to scene? And it starts to just take us one step out from a story that could otherwise be much more engaging in certain situations. So the cons are that you potentially have lower reader engagement than first or third. MTS particularly is about feeling fear, being thrilled. Less of a filter can be a very positive thing in that. More of a filter can be detrimental. There are exceptions, of course. The biggest thing is that consistency is key. The potential for reader confusion can be quite high because of this. I mean, head hopping is actually kind of a hallmark of omniscient narration because that's literally what they're doing, is they're hopping from head to head and telling the story. And so if we're doing that multiple times in one chapter, or, we have like Joe is sitting over here and having this conversation and he's thinking this, and Susan is here and she's thinking that, yes, it can be helpful to know what's going on, but it can also be really confusing for the reader if we don't completely understand who this narrator is and how they know all of this. And so the narrator can lie and hide things as well because they're their own character in the story. The reader may feel cheated because at the end, when you have these twist reveals, if there's no way for the reader to know what that twist was because there were no on-screen villain clues, all of a sudden you're looking at something where the reader's like, well, how was I supposed to figure that out? And this is another hallmark of MTS, is that readers love to try to figure out the puzzles as they're going. A pro for MTS is that the narrator knows and sees all. So raising goosebumps is relatively easier. If you have an omniscient hovering alien octopus above that scene where the person's chopping vegetables, they're going to look down and be like, ooh, chopping vegetables. Ooh, person outside who wants to do them harm. What's going to happen? They don't know. They're unaware of this thing behind them. That can be very, very effective depending on the type of narration you're choosing. So Kerry, do you have any examples? We didn't talk about this before, so sorry about putting you on the spot, but like an example of like this is classic in like Dickens. I mean, that's actually told from Watson's perspective, but like, or Sherlock Holmes, right?
For omniscient?
Yeah, for omniscient. Like it's a classic thing from like the late 1800s. This is how every single mystery was told. Like when mystery started, it was all omniscient narration. And we've moved away from this. And I think this is why, is because it's about this engagement and fear, right? And it's hard to feel as much fear if you're having a hovering octopus.
Yeah, so when I don't have a good MTS example right off the top of my head, but I was mentioning Nancy mentioned atonement, and that is actually
Nice.
because that is when people ask me about head hopping and I pull out atonement, there's a specific passage which I don't have in front of me, obviously,
Yeah.
but that is the example that I use of like, here's how it can be done well.
Yes.
And I think too about a lot of people call out, and it's funny because I think people are very divided, but about Louise Penny, she head
Hmm.
hops a lot. And some people love it and don't mind it at all and think that those people who do mind it are just being mean. And then people who it bothers, it really bothers. And they're like, well, I love her, but she head hops like crazy. So I have not, I mean, I read most of the Gamache novels at this point, I think, and it
Yeah.
never really jumped out too bad to me. So I guess I was one of those people it didn't bother, but I do want to go back now and read a little bit more and see what they're talking about. So
Yeah. So, I mean, this is another good point, is that this is all such a personal choice and it's what you like to read is the kind of book you should write. And I'm
yeah.
going to use the word should there because it's actually true in that case. Like we want to put more art out there in the kind of way that we enjoy art,
Mhm.
right? And so if you, the author, love this concept of like, okay, I'm going to be in this paragraph with this person, and then I'm going to move to this paragraph with this person and show it an entirely different way, that can totally work. It's just that we need to
Mhm.
give the reader a chance to understand that the head hopping is happening. Head hopping does not work when we kind of like flip midstream and the reader does not know that we've changed. And that's where you get that whiplash. I have not read the Gamache novels, but I'm guessing that Louise Penny gets away with this because we are making it clear that we're moving to a different head. And it may be multiple times in one chapter, but she's an excellent writer, clearly. She's very successful. And it works because it works, is kind of the way to think of it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a little hard. It's like it's that thing, you know it when you see it, and then it doesn't work.
yeah,
And there is that subjective aspect to it. But just to, add on to what you said, if your vision for your story is to have an omniscient narrator and to be manipulating the reader that way, even though it's maybe fallen out of favor a little bit, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Because when it's done well, it's amazing. So, don't let
yeah.
that discourage you from trying it anyway and seeing if it works or not.
Yeah, totally. My best example that I can give for Omniscient, which again is not MTS, is like every single Disney movie. When there's like that over voice and you open up the book at the beginning and they're like literally telling a fairy tale to you and you don't know who's talking, you don't really care. It's just that you're there for the ride. That can work very well. But that also is not really getting into what these people are thinking because it's a different medium. So,
Mm.
it's something where it's very visual. As books and as authors of books, we have the chance to take people into people's heads. And I think that that's where it can get confusing between like, okay, am I choosing omniscient? Like, am I doing a deep dive into people's heads? Am I doing close third? I've heard omniscient be referred to as like hold out third, which is also an accurate way of describing that, where you're not actually getting into people's heads. But anyway, we can talk about this in the Q&A, but there are pros and cons to all three of these. Make the best choice for your story. Be careful about confusing the reader is kind of the, yeah. Okay, so some rules, quote unquote, because there are ways to break these. Generally, a POV that you choose matches a character throughout. So we don't generally have like a switch from first to third for the same character or vice versa. If we do, that can feel like kind of a cheaty manipulation of the reader that may not be satisfying to them. It can also pull them out of the story and be potentially confusing. And one of the things that with MTS we desperately want to avoid is anything that pulls the person out of the story. We want the reader to sink in, be completely drawn in to the point where they're like, oh my God, I have to stay up until 4 a.m. to finish this because I have to know what happens. We don't want to give them a second to think like, oh, I could put it down right now and I could fall asleep. Like, this is part of the reason I read thrillers is I give myself like 20 minutes before I fall asleep every night to read. And I'm often like holding my eyes open so I can see what happens because this is why thrillers are amazing, right? We want to be drawn in this way. However, reader expectations are that your POV is going to match throughout the book. And so playing with the expectation that two different POVs are different people can work beautifully. So I've seen this done. Again, it's a little bit cheaty. Sometimes you're going to end up with readers being like, that's kind of unfair, but also like you pulled it off and I'm okay with it. So it's like if it works, it works. But for example, like letters and diary entries, we don't know necessarily who's writing the diary. We can very easily misdirect the reader to think it's somebody else and then have it learn that it's actually this other person. Or like Riley Sager, Middle of the Night, fantastic book. If you haven't read it yet, I really enjoyed it. It's a pretty quick read. It's a fun ride. But without saying anything more, I will say that that is a thing that comes up in that. Okay, so creating suspense with POV choice. First of all, ask yourself, what genre are you writing in? Because there are some genre expectations. Thriller, multiple POVs are super common. We're often going to hear from the villain themselves because we're going to know what they want and what they're after. And Kerry and I were talking yesterday, and we realized that another definition of like a differentiation between thriller and mystery is that mystery is the story of solving a crime that's already happened. There may be future crimes that are related to that initial crime, but there's always going to be an initial crime that the person is like, well, what happened? Who murdered this person? Whatever. Thriller is about preventing a crime that will ultimately happen. And again, there might be a little crime at the beginning that leads to it, but we know there's going to be some like big world-ending, life and death stakes, huge event that's going to happen if we, the protagonist, don't stop it. And so in thriller, if you have multiple POVs, including this person who's planning this like world-ending event, that becomes very interesting, right? We are thrilled because and scared and excited and I know everything, it's all the feelings, but we're there for the ride. We're there to see how it all shakes out. And we trust that because it's a thriller and chaos will be brought to order, that everything's going to stop and it's going to be saved. But it often comes to that knife's edge point where we don't know what's going to happen. And this is why we keep reading. Can be a mix of first and third. Sometimes you can have omniscient if you're playing with that very carefully. For example, The Drift by C.J. Tudor. Kerry and I did a deep dive on this, which we will announce soon. Excellent use of omniscient to misdirect the reader and also provide some framing. Just chef's kiss, genius, worked incredibly well. Suspense, especially psychological suspense, dual POV is super common. Domestic suspense, it's usually one partner versus another partner, and they have opposite goals, and we're hearing from both of them. And maybe there's some misunderstanding in there or whatever, but the suspense comes from like, how is this all going to shake out? It can be a mix. It can be both first. Alice Feeney, his and hers, I think, was all first POV. Or at least two of the characters were first POV and they were different people. That can totally work. You can have both third. You can have a mix of first and third. It kind of just depends on the story you want to tell and how engaged you want the reader to be. So choosing first is like, that's a pretty intense indication that this is your protagonist. If you have third, maybe they're a secondary character, we still need to hear from them, but being engaged with that first person POV, that's like your stickiest POV for readers. Third can also work really, really well. Omniscient, not as sticky, I would say. I'll just go ahead and say it. So ask yourself, what do you want the reader to feel? How do you want them to be drawn in? Do you want to let them, risk like having a less sticky POV for them? What is your goal with telling this story? What kind of genre you're writing in? All those things are things to consider before you dive in and make a choice. Omniscient is slightly more removed than first, but it can be powerful for framing. I already said this, but like this is actually the opening lines of the drift. And I give examples here of all three POVs so that you can see. I won't read this out loud because I kind of, I truncated it so it would fit on this slide. But if you pick up the first page of that book, it's omniscient POV. We don't know who's talking. We don't know who's describing this. And it kind of doesn't matter. We're into it because it's just describing a scene and it's setting up what is going on in this book. It is beautiful framing because we literally see a dead body, animals eating it, like snow, cold. We know this is going to be a thrilling story about how this all came to be. But it also is clear that there's some kind of disease happening here and that it's very dangerous because it's killing people inside of a week. All of that beautiful framing for that story. It works really, really well. First person brings the reader in immediately. And I've, you often see this kind of a common thing that I think works beautifully is like if you have a psychological thriller or just a straight up thriller, you might even see the story start from the first person POV of someone who's dying. And like they see the killer, and then we go into the story, and our whole story is about who is the killer. Mystery, also pretty common. So you can have a differentiating POV with that as well, where you actually kill off the first person POV and then you go into third for the rest of the story or vice versa. Lisa Unger's new book, The New Couple in 5B, another banger, highly recommend. Again, I'm not going to read this, but it's excellent framing. It's like describing a scene that's going to be happening much later in the book, and then we go back. So you're setting the tone for it being something that's going to be like, okay, we're starting off with this kind of, when we enter the story proper, it's like kind of quiet, where we know there's going to be something happening, but we're not really sure. We don't have like a dead body on the first page, but because we have this like true prologue, or, kind of anchoring scene at the very beginning, we know that there's going to be some serious stuff that happens and we don't even know who these people are. We don't care. We just feel the vibe. And this is one of the big things about first that's really nice. It's like you suck that reader in so hard that they're like, oh, okay, I'm in, whatever is going to happen. Like, I want to see how this shakes out. Third, somewhere in between. The next Mrs. Parrish, Liv Constantine, that's the sequel to The Last Mrs. Parrish. I just finished that one too. It's great. Really liked it. I think they did a really good job for a book that I'm not sure they intended to ever have a sequel to. And they nailed it. And so, this is third person. The first person we care about is Amber because she's the villain from the last one, and we want to know what's going on. And so we have immediate anchoring for where things are now. We know immediately when the story starts and what Amber wants. And I think that worked really, really well because that was the very first question I wanted answered when I picked up this book. And they answered it, and it was great. So being intentional about your choices is one of the biggest things. Again, this example of like you're the person chopping vegetables, something tickles the back of your neck in first person. We don't know what it is, but we, the reader, are like, oh shit, you should listen to that. We feel like we're being watched, but that's crazy. We're alone. Like you can talk yourself out of it, but then it turns out that it's true. Second POV could be from outside watching. All of a sudden, this becomes very scary, right? Because we, the reader, know that the first person has no idea that this person's actually there and they should have listened to their instincts. The reader is extremely engaged with this kind of setup. What's going to happen? That was really loud. I hope it wasn't for you guys. What is your goal with how you want the reader to learn what? So as we've talked about before, twists are a reveal of the truth that's unexpected. It's a reveal of the villain's truth. And it's unexpected because the POV character did not assume that that's what the solution, the truth was going to be. Is there a way to play with reader expectations to create a twist using POV? Again, could we pretend or could we have a diary entry that's in third or first and a POV in third or first and not understand that those are the same people? maybe the letter is being written to somebody and we have it wrong, or the person writing the letter is not the person we expected. Those kinds of things, those unexpected motivations, those are what create really positive or, very satisfying twists. One of the bigger things, again, this is kind of on the rules front, POV characters can't lie in their interiority. So I can't to myself, unless they're an unreliable narrator, which is a whole other thing. But like typically, if I'm sitting here being like, I am sitting at this table with this laptop and giving this presentation, I can't be like, actually, I'm on a ship or whatever, right? Like I need to be telling the truth about where I am. I might be able to not mention everything. That is not a lie. I can, hide details, but I can't say like, God, Kerry, help me out here. What's a good lie that would not work? Sorry, I just put you on the
I don't
spot
know.
with
Now
your eyes.
I'm like, oh, but you're on a well, no, I'm thinking about
So I am on a ship and I'm not mentioning I'm on a ship. So I'm at a desk and what's a lie that I would, I don't feel I might, if a lie would be like, I don't feel anything moving.
I was just saying, yeah, something about like the stability of the ground that you're on, right?
Yeah,
Like everything is, like I'm tucked into my nook and I feel very safe and secure. Like
right. And the
that's not great,
expectation
but
is that I'm sitting in a cozy cabin in the woods, what is actually I'm on a ship. Whereas if I were to say, oh, I definitely don't feel the ground moving, like that would be a lie that the reader would be like, come on, man. Like, no, that's not, you just straight up lied to me and that's not okay. And so there is withholding information and then there's a straight out lying. We don't lie to people because you'll break the contract and they'll throw the book across the room and never read you again. They'll feel cheated. They will be angry. I don't recommend it. So again, this is another example, sort of like just read it. The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. Fantastic book, very weird and twisty, and just there's some stuff that is withheld that just works beautifully. And when it is revealed at a certain time, you're like, ooh boy, I made some assumptions about that I shouldn't have. It's amazing. People can lie in dialogue. So the contrast of interiority versus lying and what they say out loud is delightfully engaging, right? You can have even just like the words I lied after saying something can be really fun because the reader's like, ooh, I know your secrets. Like I'm in this with you. We want to draw people in that way. Omniscient is a way to get around that because omniscient, if you're making assumptions from this alien octopus hovering above, they can make assumptions about what people's motivations are below them that they're watching, and that can create a twist. But again, that's a whole other character. It's a whole other thing. It can get confusing and it can feel a little bit cheaty to the reader because we are going along with what they say is going on. But twists are basically assumptions about motivations in general. So take that for what you will. Be intentional about who you choose to give a POV. We don't need POVs for every single person. They need to have a very good reason to have a POV. Often we can discover what we intended for a character to be able to reveal through dialogue, for example. So a lot of words here, but for the example is the first person is lying to the second person. Without a POV for the second person, we only know what the first person is assuming about the second person. That can be a great setup, right? We're making assumptions about motivations. But if we know both of them are lying, it's more of a how is this going to go down domestic suspense sort of situation. It can be more difficult to land a twist with that because twists would need to come from both of their assumptions about some outside issue that is incorrect. So if the reader knows that both of them are lying, then we understand what the actual motivations are, and the twist will not be twisty. It will just be like, yeah, okay, you guys figured out what was actually going on. Asking what if when you examine your characters, what if I give this person a POV? What would it add to the story? How does that like change the reader experience, maximize it? When I'm first doing my discovery writing, one of my favorite new exercises that I've discovered this summer is to come up like what starts books for me is like a scene, like it's usually like a dead body because dark. But it's like, okay, who's looking at this? Who found it? What if there's someone over here who's watching the police examining this? If it's the police person, what do they want? Is this their first? Is this their 10th? Are they actually the killer? What if there's someone who discovers the body and makes some assumptions about it because reasons, whatever, you can start to picture like who are all these people around this central thing that's happened that's already done. And what if they have all kinds of secrets and all of a sudden you start to have a story. And so when you're trying to figure out like ideation for a new story, that's one of my favorite things is just come up with a scene and then figure out who's there and what their secrets are and why they're there. If you don't have a POV for a person, does that potentially increase the twistiness? Because again, the reader's not learning what their motivations are. Actually, we're just relying on the assumptions of motivation from everybody else. Make sure each POV moves the story forward. I have made this mistake myself. It is nothing to be ashamed of, but too many POVs can get confusing, too many characters. I love Game of Thrones and Outlander, Diana Gabaldon, amazing. However, there are so many characters in both those books to the point where you kind of have to keep a mental list of like who's what, and if you're a super fan like I am, I've read those books probably 15 times at this point. I know who people are, but I still forget these minor characters. And I'm like, wait, who? Where were they? So try to avoid that. They get away with it because they're who they are. But for those of us who are not godlike in the literary world, and we're just trying to get our first books out, second books, third books, like let's try not to confuse the reader is kind of a good goal. And then our final reminder on every single one of these webinars, do not compare yourself to final books in the bookstore. These people have gone through so much editing, so much ideation, so many drafts. Sometimes books just come out. Sometimes it takes people 15 years to get them on the page. And both of those solutions are extremely valid. And it takes as long as it takes. So as we mentioned, our next AMA is going to be in October. We'll cover setting an MTS. That is the date. If you're on our email list, you'll receive the invitation to join. And I will email out the link of this recording in just a few hours once it actually uploads. And then Kerry and I will very quickly go through what Shadows and Secrets is, and then we will open it up for Q&A, at which point we'll just stop the recording so this isn't too long. So this year's 25th to 29th in Salem, Massachusetts, we are closed for applications this year. We have an absolutely incredible group of people coming. Would love to have anyone who's interested come to 2025, which we are in the process of planning, and we'll announce some stuff on that front pretty soon. We are a 5-day writing retreat for mystery, thriller, and suspense authors looking for transformation with their work in progress. This can be anything from like an idea that you want to blast out into an outline to you're in revision hell and you want to figure out how to fix it. The limit is 12 writers. Again, this is the dates for this year, but if you're on our email list, go on our website, you'll receive all the updates for everything. Kerry, you want to take this one?
Sure. So the people that we are looking to bring into the fold and looking to help are you are an MTS curious or you are an MTS author already. You can have written a full-length novel, but as Sam says, we have folks that are ideating on something. And that's totally fine as well, because I think, like that's part of our process is helping people like excavate the idea and figure out where they want to go with it. So having a solid idea is just fine as well. Although if you've written a full-length novel and you understand like the steps in the process and how you go from A to B, that's certainly helpful. We're definitely looking for people who are very serious writers who are willing to put in the work. Sam and I work super hard on both our coaching and on our own work, and we were just looking for like-minded souls in that way as well. There is some built-in downtime, of course, because we want you to be able to process all the things that we're going to be learning and talking about in the coaching sessions that we'll be doing in the mornings. But we are going to be busy, but we also do want to make sure that you have time to absorb everything and apply the lessons and walk away feeling like you've really made some serious progress and you know exactly where you want to go next. So Salem is a haunted hotel. We have not 100% decided on whether we're going to go back or not. Nothing against, I think everyone's super excited to be in Salem, so we may be back. Who knows? We are also wildly inclusive, no jerks, please. We welcome everybody who is serious and excited about MTS. We talk about ourselves being a couple of weirdos who love to nerd out on craft and writing, especially as it relates to mystery, thriller, and suspense. And if that's you, you are our people. We want you to come and hang out and have fun with us. Plotters and discovery writers are most welcome, but do know that we are planning because we want you to be able to walk away from this, as I've said, with a great roadmap and just be able to go forth and write. To borrow something from Grub Street that I just love how it comes back to me.
Go forth and write. Yeah.
We want to put
put bumpers on your plan so that you know where you're going, but it's not like so plotty that you know exactly what's happening in every single scene. Like we look at the big picture stuff. It's gonna be fun. Kerry and I both cuss. So if that's offensive, then just be warned. There is optional wine. You're gonna make a ton of new friends. The people that we have been drawing into this are just absolutely incredible, and I am so excited for everyone to meet in real life. So I think we're all gonna be best friends. We focus on brainstorming solutions versus rewriting. Kerry and I both believe strongly that, like, you know, if someone cares enough to write a whole novel and think about an entire novel, there's a decent chance that what you already have in there might be able to twist it a little bit and come up with a solution so that you're not completely redoing everything from ground up. Sometimes that does happen. It's happened to me. But you know, the core idea is often enough to carry you through. We focus on character deep dives, twist brainstorming, unblocking. This is our goal. And we want you to walk away from a, you know, either completed or revised or planned from scratch outline with 3 twists and all the clues and everything, so you know exactly what's happening with your villain, which, if you've heard us talk, is the thing that we believe is the most important thing to figure out about MTS. And that is our website. And that is all we have today. So I'm going to hit stop recording so that we can do a little, there we go.